Hello. Here we are rigging up. Just select the old super match there. This is a Century rod I'm using here, tip tornado, and using lugworm. Just sort of walking down to the beach without falling over. And calm day on this day. Just looking to get out in the gully there. Try and find a flatfish or two. Doubt you'd find any codling at that stage of the tide. That's low water. And no snags on this beach. And the tide is flooding. And just setting the rod there, just tightening the lines, just winding to the lead till it's tight. Casting out the other rod. I think we use size number 4 small hooks here. If codling around, you'd use something like 2/0, but just using the small hooks just so you can get some dabs. And yeah, just making sure that you're not casting your lead over the other lead, just an off the ground cast or South African cast, whatever you want to call it. Gets a good fair way out there. We're using on the multiplier, we're using £15 Daiwa Tournament fluoro mono, and on the other I think it's a £30 brand, which is a bit too heavy, but on that rod it still goes out a fair way anyway. So this is the area where I'm fishing. There's obviously sort of a concrete wall I'm fishing off there to keep the sea from eroding the cliffs, but a lot of the beach has been, all the sand has been eroded away anyway. It's very badly damaged, that 1950s defence system there. So we got in a little bit of a pickle in the evening where we had to sort of cut the session short because the tide was coming up. But I'll show you that a bit later. But yeah, nice conditions, nice and still, good for casting. I don't know what I'm rambling on about there, but obviously something I've got excited over. And yeah, you notice I sort of, from where the rods are, I walk to the left there. And if I was casting the other rod, I'd probably walk straight out in front, so I'm a good 20 yards away, because you can't always guarantee that you're not going to put the gear right alongside each other. You want them a little bit spaced apart for me, because over the years I have actually wound the other set of gear in, and that ain't a nice feeling. That's like a 1 step forward, 2 steps back. So yeah, so we're using a fixed spool on this outfit, and as you can see I'm heading more towards that side of the beach there, and we're just looking to get it in that gully there, to get it past the breakers. I mean, I was probably getting it, if I was whacking it full pelt, I was probably getting it on the bank, not over the other side, and that's with like an 8-ounce lead, 7-8 ounce lead. So some blokes will probably do it. Here's a dog, look, crazy dog. Just a word with dogs running around like that without a lead on, just make sure your hooks are up and out of the way, and your lugworm has got a lid on it. I've had situations where I've had to sort of rescue dogs from my gear and telling them off and nicking bait and all sorts. So, but yeah, it's species we caught on this day. I think we've got some whiting, we've got some rockling, and I think we got a few coalfish as well. This was a few days ago. This was I think New Year's Eve. So this is a few days before this new lockdown. Quite a few days before this lockdown. And the fishing wasn't spectacular, but sometimes it's just nice just to sort of get the cobwebs off the gear and just a bit of casting practice and things like that.
Yeah, so we just got some leads, spare leads in there. Got some shock leaders, spare leader, hooks. Hooks are in one of these, I think. What else we got in there? Pliers, got my light in there. Bait is here. There are sort of 2 packs of 75. All on there. Nice lugworm in there, look, you can see it very well. Another Rockling. There he is. That's the hook. Straight hook in. Nice grand hook.
Yeah, unhooking small little fish. I mean, I mainly just find the end of the hook and sort of, push it down. Or you can stick your finger in its mouth and sort of push the hook back, so to speak, to sort of release it from the bar. But you can buy sort of a mini T bar distorter or something, but very rarely do you have to snip off the hooks. If they were seriously gut hooked, then maybe you would have to, but you don't usually. But yeah, so that tripod there, that's an Ian Gold's tripod. It's quite good because there's lots of different things you can adjust on it to get it just right. It's mainly for like match fishermen, but it's got a little hook on it as well. You can put your lantern on there, or you can put a bag of stones on there. It's very adaptable. So yeah, that's a few pounds more than a usual sort of tripod, but that's worth the extra for the quality of the components and the bits and pieces, and it won't fall to bits either. So yeah, so we're just casting out, just tightening up the fixed spool there, and just letting the lead sort of settle in the bottom, and just waiting for those telltale tabs. But there wasn't too much weed on this day. There's a little bit on the start of the flood, but there wasn't too much. Trying to think what lead I was using here. I think I was using about 7 ounce grapnel on this one, and I really do dig in the seabed quite well. And yeah, we're just sort of looking to get it in anywhere in that gully really. I mean, as long as you get 50 yards, make a lot of difference. But when I was pelting it, I was about probably getting it in the middle of that bank out there, which is no good at all. Be okay in the spring for bass, but not a lot of good winter time. So we just sort of a gentle sort of flick, and just as long as you can get it, in sort of a flatfish sort of area, just in the drop off there. But tide was coming in here. Sometimes your gear can catch on these stones here at high water, and you think, oh, what's catching on it? And usually it's just these sort of stones here, which are sort of fairly biggish. One or two of them are fairly biggish, but shouldn't be enough to get snagged up. Obviously this edge here of this concrete wall I'm standing on, you can see how it's all sort of corroded and got damaged by the stones. That's actually not that sharp, that's very smooth. So you'd be surprised, you can actually wind your gear up over that if you really had to. Or, if something happened where, you didn't quite know where your lead was, it wouldn't be the end of the world. You can just check, once you retrieve your gear, you just check it just to make sure it's alright to survive another cast. But yeah, it's fairly useful, this spot, but we stuck on this spot for maybe another hour or two after this footage was taken. Tide came in quite a lot. I hadn't fished this spot for years, but I'll be honest with you, a lot of it has been, a lot of the sand used to cover all this years ago. The tide can now, on a big tide and a strong northerly, the sea will actually brush up to the cliffs. You do get slides from time to time, so it's not a rough water venue. Be alright fishing it on the sort of the second half of the ebb to half in on the flood. But anything after that, if it's rough, you're going to get washed off it or worse. So it's changed quite a bit in 20 years. That's all the Dutch dredging all the sand and nicking it off our coastline. Believe that if you will. Yeah, so this is a Rockling, and we had a few of them on this trip. And they're a bit of a pest fish if you're fishing for codling, but they sort of turn up.
A little bit of slack on that one.
Within a couple of years, they sort of come through together, sort of on a period of time within the session. They're not there all the time.
More depth of water here, really.
Whiting are generally around about dark, and the Rockling usually come when it's light. You're going to get a few edible crabs, they'll come when it's light as well. But yeah, it's just nice just to be out there. And this was actually -1, so it's pretty damn cold. Nice winters. I think this was the last day of December. I think this was New Year's Eve. I generally have a fish around about, either Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve, or one of those evenings. I'll sort of give it a go just to see if there's anything there. But this year the codling run is next to non-existent. Really disappointing. And that happens fairly regular, really. Sometimes you can come down here, you can pull 10 out on a good year. Another okay year, you might get a couple, or 4 or 5. And some years you won't get any because they've just had a bad breed.
Yeah, another one. Look.
But there's plenty of these about. There's plenty of whiting around. As you can see, we just got the head torch on, and as the light starts to go, these pin white and start to turn up. They're actually, even these are actually quite small.
He's on the bottom hook.
Used to call these pin whiting. And yeah, you can eat them if you gut hook them. You can take them home and eat them, sort of thing. But they're a bit bony. They taste quite good. The flesh is quite tasty, but they're sort of a bit bony. Yeah, so we've got the 2 century rods just rigged up alongside each other. We're behind the wall now. I'll sort of explain it to you as it sort of went, really. It sort of hadn't been there for a while, so we sort of I would have fished somewhere different on that evening to be a little bit more relaxed, but it got so I ended up packing the session up probably an hour and a half before high water, because I thought I was going to get away with fishing over the top of the tide, but as it started to dawn on me, it was, the tide was coming up and I was having less and less space to fish and cast, and getting back's a bit of a problem because there's been actually a cliff slide towards the car park, so it actually gets cut off, and I had to actually march through the sea to sort of get back to the car, which I don't really like to do. But it wasn't too bad. It was about boom height with the odd wave coming through at about knee height, waist height. Carrying all your gear and all your salopettes on and all welly boots and stuff like that. I wouldn't advise doing it when it's rough. But bearing in mind, I've done a lot of that over the years, so it was a little bit dicey, but didn't feel too dangerous. So, it was either that or just be stuck there all night. So I went and do that. I couldn't climb over the top of the cliff because it was all just swamp mud. I would have sunk in it like quicksand probably. So yeah, so we've got some more pin white in here, and size sort of 4, number 6 hook there. You can see the lead's a breakaway. That's a 7 ounce. I actually wrap a elastic band around these legs. I'm crazy. The reason I do that because on this particular breakaway they seem to pop out quite a lot. I don't really like them at all. I like the sort of the other leads where they sort of clip into the actual body of the lead. But there you go. With the elastic band, you can still get them to work. With a lead lift, they're not too bad at all. Without a lead lift, they catch all the time on the way and are horrible to use. So this is the inside. We were previously just fishing the other side of that, so I've got behind that for a bit of protection. We're probably 2 hours before high water here. And it wasn't many minutes after this when I decided to pack the gear up and go, because we got hit with a wave, and I checked the time and I thought, ooh, that's come up a bit too quickly for my liking, and when you haven't fished a beach regular for, you haven't been there for like 10 years, you look at the coastal erosion in this part of the coast, it was actually quite a silly sort of manoeuvre to actually fish there, really, to think I could probably get away with it. But I've been fishing for years, it just proves that you can get caught out. But the trouble is, this particular spot has always produced fish for me. especially codling. And I always like to get to somewhere where, you know, it was produced in the past. But it's a little bit disappointing we couldn't stick it out till high water, because even on a poor year, you can actually get some fish right on the top of the tide. And around Christmas time, right on Christmas, you know, Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve, those sort of nights in the past have always produced, even on poor years, you can always pluck out one or two. So that's why we took a punt at it, and it backfired. But there you go, that's been done before. So I'm not actually quite sure what I'm doing here, but you can see a finger stall on my left arm there, and that's just solely used for the fixed spool reel caster there. Just to let you know that obviously a fixed spool is a lot easier to control at night than a multiplier. However, saying that, this particular multiplier I have got it's quite slow, and it's a lot easier to control. I've got this Daiwa Mag Elite, and that's a lovely cast and reel for distance. But if you got your magnet set too light, or you make a mistake, you'll snap your gear off. But it's a good casting reel. It's my best casting reel for distance. But if you want to consistently just keep putting your gear out there without having to worry about tying it on and all this sort of stuff and losing leads, you want to go to some gear which is you know, going to be reliable. So these are that's a grapnel lead. So you just have to pull that in a position. Just sort of crunch the wires back into a sort of a holding position again, because they come loose on the retrieve. Very effective at holding bottom. Deadlifts are good. I'm not quite sure what happens to me here. I just sort of disappear. I'm guessing oh no, we're back. Just see the outline of the, is that a wave? Just come splashing over that. There you go. See, and this was like 2 hours before high water, and we've already got about another, I don't know, 10 metres behind me until the cliffs are there, and they've been getting quite a few mudslides recently, so it can get a little bit spooky sometimes when you're down here on your own doing this, a little bit dicey. But yeah, so we sort of, you know, the fishing wasn't amazing, and you know, if there was plenty of fish there, you know, we would have stuck it out probably hell or high water. You know, you'd be surprised at what a couple of fish in your tackle box does to your confidence levels. But if you're struggling, if the whole country's sort of struggling to get the fish, I mean, there's one or two bits and pieces being caught around the country from what I can see. But you know, there was a video not long back done by a couple of guys who do YouTube, and they're out in a boat, and even they were sort of saying they're out in a boat, and they were sort of talking about they were small, not many on them and stuff. You know, it's just a bad breed. You can just make out my head torch there. Just casted it out. Now, in the dark, when there's plenty of fish there, you just don't need a big cast. You don't need to whack it too hard. You just need to get it out there, really. 50 yards is all you need. And so you get another nice little white in there. Was it a Coalfish? I can't remember. We did have one Coalfish on the session. That might be a Coalfish. I don't know. It's probably a white. And yeah, just take straight lug, fresh lug, and we sort of my mind is sort of spinning around at the minute. It may look like I'm calm, but underneath I'm sort of thinking, oh shit, I should probably be getting out of there. Because the wind can change and the swell can change in a short space of time. See the tide there, look, coming up, and I'm sort of, in the back of my mind, I'm sort of thinking about a strategy to sort of get the hell out of there, because I'm actually cut off by the tide here where I am, and just sort of weighing up how I should tackle it, what should I do. The strategy was pack the gear up, get the hell out of there, and face the music when we get to the cliff, which has cut me off from the car park. So in the end, we just waded round, and I was, you know, we got a boot full of water. Had to hold on to the revetment for one wave which come through, so to speak, and had to wade through the sea for about a minute. But if it was dangerous, I would have just stayed put. But you know, sometimes you just sort of, you know, if you've got a fishing spot, you want to fish, and you just feel that's where you're going to catch them. You know, I want to fish there, regardless. And even if it don't come right, I'll, you know, try and fudge it so you can get back home. Rightio, guys.
Yeah, whenever I want to use this GoPro for something, it'll flick out in the dark, and I'll turn it on, it'll flick over to bloody photos. So then you need to turn the light on to sort of to get it onto the movie bit. It's just, oh my god. Anyway, that's -1 degrees, look at that, -1. A little bit cold. We cut the session short because the area where I fished, it wasn't holding out too well as the tide was coming in. What I'm saying is it was had another hour and a quarter to come up, and it was because a lot of the sand had been eroded. It was it's not as high as other parts of the beach along there, so plus there'd been a cliff sort of slide further along which cuts off the car park, so I hadn't fished it for years. I knew it was going to be dicey. Hang on, this car just sitting here. I knew it was going to be dicey, but I just decided to go ahead with it anyway. Looking back, I just wish I just picked somewhere else, but I hadn't fished there for years, so you never really know. But just as a word of advice, just play it safe. I've had God knows how many of them over the years, different sort of situations. Yeah, you'll know when something's just too dicey to do, but I've done hundreds of ones like that. I mean, I was probably knee height with water with all my gear trying to get back in front of this cliff there tonight, and I had an hour to come in, an hour and 15 to come in. It was flat calm but big-ish tide. But sometimes I've had loads of cod from that spot years ago, but it's just a shit year. I was just then thinking to myself, that's like with all this pandemic and people told to work from home and this, that and the other, they've got plenty of time to go fishing. That's sod's law, but they've bugger all cod to go and catch. I mean, it's just, you know, it's unbelievable. You know, you sometimes when there's loads of fish there, you've never got any time to go and fish for them, is it? Because you've got work commitments and stuff like that. So when there comes a time when you're allowed to work from home and you've got loads of free time, then there's no fucking cod there. That just drives you crackers. I should become self-employed where you can just pick and choose when you want to go fishing. But anyway, just a little bit disappointing, but pleased we got back in one bit. Not going to fish that area tomorrow. I've probably got my 50 worms left. It's nice, going to be nice and cold in the car. I'm just going to leave the worms in the car, and I might drive up to the coast tomorrow and just fish during the day somewhere, just see if I can get a few dabs. Do that, just to use them up, just for an afternoon, just somewhere a bit different. Bring the camera, just sort of show you something a little bit different. But yeah, tonight we caught a coalfish, some whiting, and some rockling. But we didn't. The best part of the tide we sort of missed because of the tide was so full. You know, bit of a mistake on my part, but there you go. You sort of, at least when I'm doing my bass fishing, I'll know not to waste my time up there. So it's like you can think it's a disaster, but when you think ahead, you're like, well, I'm not going to get caught on that one in the springtime. Do you know what I'm saying? So you may have a disaster, but it's like I'm saying, every time you go fishing, you learn something. So don't get too disheartened. Pull what you can from it. You know. And all right, I'll stop rambling now. And please subscribe to my channel, guys, if you want to. And more videos along the way. Going to be trying to do some boat fishing next year. You know, we're catching a a lot of small beach fish at the minute, but we're going to try and go on a few charter boats next summer if this pandemic will let us. And we're going to sort of target maybe some conger eels, maybe some big flatfish, some turbot, some cod, pollock, ling, things like that. We might try and do some uptiding, do that sort of stuff. Anyway, alright, I'll see you later guys.